Alright guys, HyDra again today. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. Big Rostermania rumours emerging this morning with at least 3 teams looking to change their team from what they fielded in Boston's Major 1 this past weekend. Thieves, though, at the top of the conversation. It seems making a 2-man change, and a controversial one at that, with the players they might be bringing in, and especially the players they might be replacing. Very much into your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, I'd greatly appreciate it. Loads to get into today. Firstly, a couple of things on ranked play. Fixes in today's MW3 update, or I guess yesterday's. The kill cams are officially back in business. I know that it was causing a lot of issues. People were frustrated, understandably, especially because in the higher ranks where the hackers are, generally speaking, it's like, well, is this guy cheating or not? I can't see, so I can't report to necessarily if, well, the wall hacks or the aimbot is particularly obvious. So that's now back in business. There are also multiple new 6v6 maps coming here to Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3. There's a map called Stash House, a map called Vista, and then another one that's, called Departures, which has like airports, you know, I don't know, train station type vibes. Who knows what exactly that'll look like. But again, it's more 6v6 maps, and we did hear Parasite say a while ago that there are plenty of maps that Cellium are trying to genuinely make for competitive play. Rio, if you look at it, it's taken inspiration very clearly from competitive maps in Call of Duty past, mainly Treyarch maps, I will say. So I don't know what these new maps are going to look like, but they're coming in the relatively near future, and Parasite says, look, you've got to think we revised the map pool to some degree. I know you guys have been playing Invasion when you spawns. I know some of you guys mentioned as well, do we need to replace any maps? Like, I don't also disagree that maybe it's a good idea to keep the map pool and just add in Rio or whatever. Now, I think if there was to come to a point where we're adding 2 maps into the game, then at least 1 will go. But I do think that not replacing maps does make it more viable to add new maps, just because teams have to agree what map goes, and they don't usually agree because they want to, even if a map is terrible, like there's obviously debate about the new terminal, the new invasion, as to, you know, whether one of those needs to go or should go, but teams will disagree on what's the better one, what's the worst one, basically based on what they're good at. So getting the teams to agree on a map to leave the map pool for Rio to come in is difficult when some teams might actually prefer one of those maps and you need like a 9 out of 12 majority to make it happen. So, you know, maybe it's more feasible for a new map to come in with nothing necessarily to be gone. But speaking of Rostermania, I thought this was a pretty sad announcement, but congrats to Kels on a very impactful career, confirming that she's retiring from competitive Call of Duty as of yesterday. One of the best, if not the best, female player ever. You guys probably remembered she qualified for the European Challengers Elite last season and has probably been one of the most impactful COD players, to be honest, in general over the last couple of seasons in terms of what she's done for the female scene. So wishing her the best going forward. Really good player as well, so wanted to show respect to what she's achieved, but we do have plenty of other Rostermania questions to discuss. This from Ronnie last night. At least 3 teams are expected to be making a change. This might also extend beyond what we are going to discuss in this video, because I'm not going to lie, if the teams we're going to mention are making changes and Vegas aren't at least considering a move, and potentially others as well, then I think questions will be raised, because, well, I think there might be other teams looking at it than just the ones we're going to mention today, but I guess we'll see tonight and tomorrow whether anything's changed on those fronts going forward. This, though, was the first thing spotted yesterday on Crimp, spotted under Boston Breach. Now, to be honest, a couple of guys pointed this out to me this past weekend during the major, that Crimp was still on Boston Breach. So I was pretty certain that there was nothing to this, and it was merely a CDL website mistake, as quite often happens, as I mentioned a few of them on the channel from time to time. So Crimp was on Boston last year, right? And I don't know, they forgot to remove him or whatever, and Crimp was still listed under Boston, despite the fact that that's no longer the case. He's gone, he's on the FaZe back team now, and is probably going to be on another team in the very near future. So he was listed under Boston Breach on the website, but Clay says, look, don't trust a single thing on the website. It's been wrong more than it's been right. So look, there's some things that you trust on it, such as maybe the schedule, and we'll discuss the schedule in a couple of minutes here, because one of these teams making moves has a rather challenging Major 2 schedule in terms of the qualifiers in order to show if their move is going to be good or bad. But the first one to mention here is from Miami Heretics. So I talked about this possibility after the major as to whether they would consider making this substitution change. At the start of the season, before the season even began, ErikBooM was initially in Miami Heretics' plan. That was their team of 4. It was Lucky, MettalZ, Vikul, and ErikBooM. That was the team of 4, and JurNii was on the bench. But they played some scrims at the start of the game. They decided to trial JurNii in the roster instead from the bench. They brought him in, they looked better, they kept him, and well, that was the team through the online stints. However, they went to LAN, it wasn't the same story, and as I've said before, historically, JurNii, even back to Black Ops 4, not as good on LAN as he was online, and this weekend in both series Miami played, he had like a 0.7. It wasn't great. So that's why I thought maybe they'll make that substitution the other way around. You might as well try it, to be fair, if you're Miami Heretics at this point. And then, look, if they do need to make a further change, if they still can't perform on LAN, there's other Spanish players they could get. There's arguably better Spanish players than the guys they have on their team, at least somewhere out there. But, you know, how it tends to go in these regions, there's maybe intra-region conflict between certain players, don't want to play with each other, whatever. This is what they're apparently going to try and do. Now, Erik was actually on an SGB Challengers team. They came top 3 this event. Arguably, they, should have come seconds, but, still a pretty solid result. He was with Cruz, Lunas, and Gunsy. Lunas, another player which I definitely think will have been considered. He's like a very hot prospect AR player on this roster that I think the Breakdown guys actually mentioned as well as potentially being linked elsewhere. So just a name there to keep your eyes on. Not the only name to have a look at, but it seems that JurNii and Erik will basically make a direct swap here, and Erik will go back to the starting team and JurNii will go back to the bench and effectively join the roster that ErikBooM was just on in Challengers. So that's what they seem to be up to. We'll see how that goes. This also from the Carolina Real Ravens. It's effectively been confirmed that TJ Halley will stay in the lineup on a permanent basis. Feel bad for Real, obviously. The visa stuff has kind of screwed him. I do think, though, that Real, as an SMG option, will probably get another chance in the league at some point. I don't think that, what he showed on Ravens at the start of the season is super indicative of how good he can be. And I feel like as, maybe time progresses, other changes are made. I wouldn't be surprised if Real finds himself another opportunity, shall we say, on a team elsewhere. But TJ signing with the Ravens on a permanent basis. I actually feel really happy for Teej about this one, just because so many players turned down the opportunity, right? I mean, when they were going to make a change in the first place, the FaZe Black guys, a few of them were turning down the chance. They were like, well, don't want to go to this team and ruin my stock. Teej has come in and undoubtedly improved his stock. Done a great job for the team. The team's improved substantially. And sure, TJ apparently said, I wouldn't take 500k to play for those guys again because it was such a shambles internally. That may have been a joke from Scrappy, who actually said that. And Scrappy did come out afterwards and say, it was just a joke, I was just messing around. But, okay, people are like, is he just saving face, or did he actually say that? Then again, though, even if Teej did say that, even as a joke, if Scrappy isn't making it up entirely, that was on the team with GodRx when probably the vibes were shot. The team with Fellow, vibes I think very different. So, regardless of the circumstances, I'm happy for Teej getting this locked in, and it seems like they're going to stick with that roster going forwards. My question, I guess, the Ravens is, have they already had their honeymoon phase? Will they be able to entertain that level or maintain that level when they get back to online play? That, I guess, is a question. But we've got to talk about Los Angeles Thieves, because this was no doubt the main team that needed to make a change at the moment, given the ambitions of Thieves to be dead rock bottom last in the league right now. It clearly wasn't good enough. Their hardpoint was atrocious, and maybe they were fine in practice, but in matches it clearly wasn't going well. And they lost again at this past weekend to Los Angeles Gullers, as they quite often do. Octane as well said, look, it's time for Cammy to go, when he was putting his tier list together, and that seems to be what's happening here. So a multiple person change, though. One of the ARs being changed out, one of the SMGs being changed out. That's what they're targeting, and I think that is the correct decision. I think a 3-man change would have been too much. I think a 1-man change would have been too few. A 2-man change sounds about right to me. Now, the first one is Kremp. So, Kremp, in terms of slaying SMG prospect in the challenger size, definitely the number one candidate, I would say. Asim, got to be right up there in consideration, but in terms of as like a more slaying option that can really run both roles. And Krim was also pretty good last year on Boston, especially in the control game mode. We'll discuss that a little bit here in a second. Definitely the number one target in challenges, and to be honest, I think Thieves are doing a good thing by getting this locked in now, because let's say you're Surge. You might want to consider a change. That probably is a good idea. But if Thieves go in and they sign the guys you might want, then, they have the advantage in terms of moving first, the first move advantage that exists in these kind of roster change periods. So crimp in for Joe Deceives, though. This is where the questions, this is probably the most controversial thing about these rumors, is exactly which player they are replacing. So we'll discuss that more in a second. The other change is Nasty. Now, this I'm really happy with. Like, I like Cammy, but he hasn't been the same as he for the last couple of years, it's got to be said. He's had maybe 1 or 2 good series so far this season. Nasty was a great player last year for London and the year before that in Vanguards, and I thought it was frankly shocking that Nasty didn't get offered some sort of spot this season, and I'm happy if this is going to be true. There may be other options Thieves are considering, but of all the organizations that are going to make changes, Thieves are like the only one that I actually have confidence will try and sort the visa stuff out right, because that's the issue with Nasty, because he comes from Europe, from the UK. You've got to sort some visa stuff out, and it's a bit of expense, it's a bit of effort, and some organizations just don't want to bother with that. Thieves are one of the organizations that actually might, and look, I think Nasty could be like a top 20 player in the league. I think definitely as like a flex option instead of Cammy, it just makes a lot of sense. And he has experience with Afro, and that maybe is one of the reasons why Afro is staying, and JurNii is quite possibly out. JKL actually says, though, that this isn't the only option at all. They are weighing up several options at ARs. So this definitely isn't a locked-in move, but of all the options that they could go for, it's probably one of the very most attractive. But I think the big controversy has been about this whole Afro versus JurNii thing, because I don't think anybody's surprised that Ghosty stays. I don't think anybody is surprised that Cammy goes. But people, of course, have been questioning whether Afro or JurNii should go. And a lot of people saying that Afro should have been gone instead of JurNii. I'm not sure I agree with that, personally speaking, but I do think that JurNii, if I was to replace him, I would keep him on the bench. I wouldn't just drop him, because I think that between Afro and JurNii, it is difficult to say, but my opinion has been that Afro definitely has the higher ceiling. And I also think there's some, I wouldn't say revisionist history precisely, but I think Afro's been better than JurNii this season. I don't think that's necessarily a controversial thing to say. In terms of impact, Afro's been, look, the team's been bad, but when they've actually had decent maps, it's usually Afro taking over. Joe is probably more consistent than Afro, and he has, I would say, a lower ceiling, but also a higher floor. Afro's the other way around. His floor is lower, and sometimes Afro gets gigafried, but his ceiling is definitely higher. And when you get the best out of Afro, I still think you can get like a top 5, top 6 sub in the entire game. And, you know, maybe I'm biased, but I've said that before, so I'm going to stick with my opinion. And the numbers kind of reflect that, really. Like, if you look at the numbers in hard points, I mean, this is the comparison between Afro and Joe. In Search and Destroy, Afro's been substantially better than JurNii. So I'm not really sure I'd buy, and okay, Control is the other way around, with JurNii having a higher KD than Afro, but also Crimp is also known to be good in Control, so maybe that balances that up to some degree. So to me, by the numbers, Afro's been better than JurNii, has a higher ceiling, has history with Nasty, great history actually with Nasty, the start of Vanguard. They're both phenomenal on that London Ravens team, so I don't think it's controversial to say that Afro should stay over JurNii. But I definitely can see it both ways, and if I was going to bench Joe, I would probably say keep him on the bench just in case it doesn't work out with Afro, then make a change. But if you want to be a top 4 team, I think you need to pick the players with the highest ceilings, because, you know, even if you want to try and get into the top 4, it's tough, right? You need players with immense ceilings, and if they want to have upward ambition, I think keeping Afro over Joe is probably the right call. I will quickly mention, though, that Thieves, whatever they do decide to do, they have a tough run. They play OpTic, they play Heretics, they play Minnesota Rocket, they play FaZe, Vegas, which is winnable, and then Ultra, and then Gorillas. So they have like 2 or 3 games there that are like reasonably achievable. Outside of that, they play a lot of the very top teams. So it's a tough stage for Thieves. They will have to form a good roster if they want to do well in it. And well, just to mention, this is obviously a joke from CDL Rostermania, but it's a good thing to close out the video on. So very much intrigued to your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.